There are certain stories that don't leave you, not because they're dramatic or unbelievable, but because they hit something raw inside you. Something we all secretly fear, but never speak out loud. And if you're a parent watching this, what I'm about to share might stir that primal instinct inside you, the one that whispers, "What if something's wrong with my child, and I can't explain it?" But before I tell you what happened to us, before you judge or scroll past, or convince yourself this is just another horror gimmick, I want you to look me in the eye and hear me clearly. You're going to get the answer you came here for. You will understand exactly why my wife won't go near our daughter anymore. But what you won't be ready for is what that answer does to you once it settles in. If you're still here, let me ask you this. Have you ever watched someone you love become a stranger right in front of your eyes? Have you ever seen someone smile, but deep down you knew, with every cell in your body, that something inside that smile wasn't human anymore? That's the look my daughter gave me one evening, when she stood in the hallway, soaked in rainwater, even though it hadn't rained for days. She was smiling, yes, but her eyes, God, her eyes looked like they'd seen something no child should ever see. And when my wife walked into the room, saw her standing there, and screamed louder than I've ever heard a person scream, that's when everything started to fall apart. Now I know some of you came here just for the possession part. You saw the title and you want to know, was she really possessed? Is this a hoax? Some paranormal nonsense? Is this one of those creepy pasta videos meant to scare kids at sleepovers? But this is where I need you to listen carefully. This isn't about jump scares or ghost stories. It's about a real family. It's about the mental unraveling of a mother, the quiet breakdown of a father who thought he had everything under control, and the terrifying shift in a little girl who used to draw rainbows and now, well, you'll see. This story is not about a demon. It's about what we become when the things we don't understand get too close. We were the perfect American family on the outside. Nice house just outside Chicago. White fence, small backyard. My wife, Rachel, worked in early education, preschool teacher, with the gentlest touch. I managed logistics for a local freight company. Not rich, but we were comfortable. Our daughter, Emily, was 7. The kind of girl who made friends instantly, always polite, always asking strange little questions about the world, questions that made you smile. Why do shadows follow you but never lead? That kind of thing. We were proud of her. She was special, and we knew it. But special can mean a lot of things. Now I need to warn you. This video is going to take you through some dark turns. Not the kind with blood and gore, but the kind that gets under your skin. The kind that makes you question what you'd do if this happened in your home. Because, honestly, we never saw the signs. Not at first. There was no spinning heads, no Latin chants, no flickering lights. It was subtle. It was psychological. It was something only Rachel saw in the beginning, and I didn't believe her. God help me, I didn't believe her. You're probably wondering, how could a mother just stop going near her own child? That's what everyone around us asked. Teachers, neighbors, even Rachel's own sister. They whispered about postpartum psychosis, trauma, stress. But none of them were there the night Rachel locked herself in the guest bedroom and begged me not to let Emily come inside. None of them saw her shake like a leaf, or heard her say, "That's not her anymore. Something else is using her face." And here's the thing that'll really mess with your head. I wanted to believe she was wrong. I needed to believe Rachel was overreacting. That maybe she was sick, stressed, hallucinating. But as a father, watching his wife break into pieces because she couldn't even bear the sound of our daughter's voice, I started to wonder, what if she was right? That's when I started recording everything. Conversations, nighttime noises, Emily's behavior. I became obsessed. I stopped going to work. I started analyzing the way she spoke, the way she laughed, even the way she stood still. Have you ever seen a child stand completely still for 40 minutes and stare at the corner of a room? That's not normal. Especially not when they don't blink. And I know, believe me, I know how this sounds. But this isn't just another scary story. This is about control. About the things we don't understand, invading the places we feel the safest. I didn't believe in evil before all this. I thought evil was a product of bad choices. But after what I witnessed, I believe evil is something that waits. It waits for your family to be vulnerable, for your faith in reality to weaken. Then it moves in slow, quiet smiling. What changed Emily? That's the question I've spent every waking moment trying to answer. Was it the trip to the lake? Was it the mirror she found in the attic? Was it the story she told about the lady who whispers in my dreams? Or was it something much older, something waiting for a child sensitive enough to see it? I've read the books. I've talked to psychologists, paranormal investigators, even clergy. Everyone has a theory. Some said she was gifted. Others said she was schizophrenic. One man, a former priest turned author, said something I still can't forget. He said, "It's not about what entered her. It's about what left." And Rachel, my wife, she hasn't touched Emily in 7 months. She avoids her completely. Won't share the same room. When Emily laughs, Rachel cries. She sleeps with the lights on. And when I ask her to explain, really explain, why she's so afraid, all she ever says is, "That's not our daughter anymore. She wears our daughter." I know. I know how insane this sounds. But I've got the recordings. I've got the footage. And before this video is over, you're going to hear something that will make you sit back and question everything you thought was possible. That's a promise. Stay until the end, because if you leave now, you'll never understand what we lost, or what we might still be living with. You came here looking for the truth behind the title, the claim, the mystery, and I'm going to give it to you, but you have to see it the way I saw it. You have to feel what we felt, because only then will the final moment, the truth behind Rachel's terror, make sense. This is the part where most stories start to wrap up. But ours was just beginning. Because the moment I decided to test what was wrong with Emily was the moment she stopped pretending to be normal. That was the night the hallway door opened by itself. That was the night the voices came back. That was the night I heard her whisper something from under her bed, in a language no 7-year-old should ever know. And just before I looked under the bed, I asked her one last question. "Emily, are you still my daughter?" What she said next, well, that's what changed everything. I didn't look under the bed that night. I wanted to. I had to. But when Emily responded to my question with a voice that didn't sound like hers, too low, too precise, like someone mimicking her from inside her own throat, I froze. She said, "She's not here right now," and the moment those words left her mouth, I felt something shift in the room, like the air thickened around me. My skin turned cold. And instead of leaning down to peek under the bed like any father should, I backed out of her room and closed the door quietly, pretending I'd seen nothing at all. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed while Rachel lay under the sheets with her back to me, her breathing sharp and irregular, her hands clutching the pillow like she was holding on for dear life. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't want to know. And I couldn't bring myself to say it. In the days that followed, Emily's behavior became more unpredictable, but only when she was alone with me. Around other people, especially at school or during Zoom calls with relatives, she was perfect, too perfect. Her voice carried the same old sweetness, her manners pristine, her answers textbook adorable. But when we were alone, she'd stare into the corners of rooms and smile to herself, like she was sharing a joke with someone invisible. One afternoon, I watched her in the backyard. She was playing with her dolls in the grass, narrating in a high-pitched voice, when suddenly she stopped and tilted her head to the side, as if listening to something only she could hear. Then, without breaking her gaze, she whispered, "He's coming tonight." I asked her who was coming, but she just turned and smiled that slow, patient smile and said, "You'll know when it's time." The chills I felt then haven't left me since. I tried talking to Rachel, tried convincing her to at least be in the same room as Emily, to watch the footage I'd captured on my phone, but she wouldn't. She said the more she looked at our daughter, the more she felt something watching her through her. Not from her, through her. That word stuck with me. It felt deliberate, like Rachel wasn't describing a child anymore but a doorway, a hollow space being used by something else. She started sleeping during the day and staying awake at night, eyes glued to the hallway outside our bedroom, clutching a rosary she hadn't used in years. Rachel wasn't a religious woman by practice, but trauma makes believers out of anyone. Sometimes I'd catch her mumbling things in Latin she'd learned from some podcast about spiritual warfare. It was like she was preparing for something. She'd given up on saving Emily. Now she was just trying to survive. Desperate for answers, I contacted a family therapist who specialized in childhood dissociation and trauma. I didn't bring up anything paranormal. Just described Emily's behavior as detached, robotic, emotionally flat. The therapist agreed to see her through a private session. I watched from the observation room, behind the one-way glass. The first few minutes seemed normal, some small talk, some drawing exercises, but then the therapist asked Emily if she ever felt like she wasn't herself. Emily paused, looked directly into the mirror, directly at me, and said, "I used to be someone else. But he said I was perfect. He said I was ready." The therapist blinked, caught off guard, and gently asked who he was. Emily giggled and replied, "He lives under the house. I feed him sometimes." At that moment, the lights in the room flickered, just once, but enough for the therapist to stiffen and for my chest to tighten. Later, when I asked what Emily meant, she said it was just a story she made up, that she'd been watching too many scary videos.
But I know what I saw.
That wasn't imagination. That was a confession. I began digging through our home's history. Our house was built in the late 60s, nothing fancy, nothing notorious. But when I checked zoning records and old property files, I discovered something strange. A well had once existed on the property, long before the house was constructed, but it had been sealed and covered. No explanation why. It was located directly under the space that now made up Emily's room. That detail haunted me, especially when I remembered the first time we moved in, how she'd said the closet in her room was deeper than it looked. I thought it was a child's imagination back then. Now I wasn't so sure. One night, I set up a small motion-activated camera inside her room, hidden behind the bookshelf. The next morning, I checked the footage. Most of it was uneventful. Emily sleeping, occasional tossing and turning. But around 3:17 a.m., she suddenly sat upright, eyes wide open. She didn't blink, didn't move, just stared at the closet for 6 solid minutes. Then, with an eerie calmness, she got out of bed, walked to the closet, and opened it. The screen went black. Not static. Just pitch black for exactly 45 seconds. When the picture returned, Emily was back in bed, tucked in, facing the camera with a slight smirk on her lips, as if she knew I'd be watching. Things escalated after that. Rachel began having night terrors. She'd wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, insisting she'd seen Emily standing over the bed, whispering things she couldn't remember. One night, she left. No warning. Just packed a bag and drove to her sister's place upstate, texting me only once, "I love you. I can't be in that house with her." She hasn't returned since. I tried bringing Emily to see her. Thought maybe a visit would help, bring Rachel back to her senses, but the moment Rachel opened the door and saw Emily, she slammed it shut and refused to come out. Later, she left a voicemail. "You don't understand, Matt. That's not our daughter. That's something that learned how to be her. Please don't bring her here again." I started keeping a journal. Not because I needed a record, but because I felt like I was losing my grip. The entries became darker, more frantic. I began dreaming of staircases that led nowhere, of drowning in the floorboards, of Emily's voice coming from the walls. In one dream, I saw her walking through our hallway, only it wasn't her body. It was her shape, but filled with flickering static, like a broken television signal trapped in human form. I'd wake up gasping for air, feeling like someone had been sitting on my chest. Sometimes I'd find scratches on my arms or bruises on my sides, but I always chalked it up to sleepwalking or anxiety. At least that's what I tried to believe. I even contacted a paranormal investigator I found through YouTube, someone who ran a channel documenting unexplained phenomena in suburban homes. He agreed to visit, bringing EMF readers, audio recorders, and motion detectors. At first, the readings were low. The house seemed quiet. But then he asked to speak with Emily. She was polite, calm, even charming. But once he asked her if she ever heard voices at night, The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. His device began emitting a high-pitched frequency. Then it shut off completely. Emily looked at him and said, "You should leave now, before he notices you." He left within 15 minutes. Later, he emailed me and said he wouldn't return, not even for double pay. His final message read, "That child isn't haunted. She's hosting. I've tried everything. Therapists, priests, energy cleansers. None of it changes what's happening inside this house. Inside her." And yet, Emily continues to act as if everything's normal. She watches cartoons, eats cereal, sings in the shower. But sometimes, when I pass by her room, I hear her talking to someone in a language I can't identify. I've recorded the audio, uploaded it to forums. No one can translate it. And sometimes, when I play the recording back, I hear another voice respond. One that doesn't belong to Emily at all. Last week, I found a drawing under her bed. It was crude, scribbled in black crayon. It showed a tall, faceless figure standing in a tunnel under our house. Emily had drawn herself next to him, holding his hand. On the bottom of the paper, in shaky letters, were the words, "He chose me because I never cry." I asked her about it. She smiled and said, "He said you'll meet him soon too. Then we can all live together." I don't know what's happening anymore. I don't know how much longer I can pretend things are fine. I keep thinking of that sealed well, that buried darkness under our home, and the things children can see before they're taught to stop looking. Something is unfolding here, and I fear we're already too deep inside to turn back. But what truly terrifies me is that part of me doesn't want to stop it.
Part of me wants to understand.
To see what's behind the smile. And last night, for the first time, I smiled back. I didn't plan to follow her that night. I just did. Something pulled me. Emily had waited until the house was still, not asleep, because I hadn't truly slept in weeks, but when it was quiet enough for secrets to move unnoticed. She stepped lightly down the stairs, barefoot, wearing her unicorn pajamas, the same ones she'd had since before all this began. Her hair was messy, a shadow across her face, and I watched from the top of the staircase as she moved with that strange, deliberate rhythm. She wasn't sneaking out like a child who feared getting caught.
No.
She walked like she knew I'd follow, like she wanted me to. That realization chilled me deeper than anything so far, that I wasn't the observer anymore. I was being led. I followed her through the kitchen, my feet silent against the cold tile. She paused once, near the hallway closet, and without looking at me said, "Don't turn on the lights." I didn't.
I don't even know why.
I felt like I was back in that dream again, weightless, silent, trapped in someone else's memory. Emily opened the basement door, and the hinges gave out a soft, groaning creak that sounded almost like a breath. She started down the stairs. I hesitated, but only for a second. The basement was a place I'd avoided recently, not because I believed in anything supernatural, but because I knew something about that space was off. The energy there felt wrong, too still, too heavy, like it was holding its breath. Emily reached the bottom and turned left, toward the old furnace room, the one we never used. I could hear her humming. It was a melody I didn't recognize, slow, repetitive, almost like a lullaby that had been warped in the dark. I stood at the top of the stairs and finally found the courage to descend. I gripped my phone tightly in one hand, its flashlight ready, but still off. Every instinct told me to leave. Every rational part of me screamed that no 7-year-old should be guiding anyone into a cold, unfinished basement at 3 a.m. But something deeper, something that had been growing inside me since Rachel left, pushed me forward. I needed to know. I had to see it for myself. When I reached the furnace room, I found Emily kneeling by the far wall, her back to me, whispering to the concrete. The room smelled like wet earth and rust, though nothing in there should have been leaking. She didn't turn to acknowledge me, didn't flinch when I stepped closer, just kept whispering until I realized she wasn't whispering to the wall. She was answering it, and that's when the twist hit me like a gut punch. The bricks weren't solid. There was a faint gap in the mortar, almost like a sealed archway. It had been filled in years ago. You could tell by the uneven patchwork, the discoloration. But through that crack, I heard something breathing.
Slow.
Measured. Matching her voice. I didn't run. I should've. But I didn't. Instead, I knelt beside her and asked, "What is it, Emily? What's behind the wall?" And she looked at me, not with fear, not with confusion, but with relief. Like I'd finally asked the right question. "It's where he sleeps," she said gently. "But he wakes up when people lie." I couldn't breathe. Lie about what? I asked. And then she smiled again, that patient, terrible smile, and said, "That they love me." That broke me. I didn't even know how to respond. My mind reeled through every bedtime story, every song, every hug, trying to measure if she'd felt loved, or if something else had convinced her otherwise. I stood up, backing away from the wall, and that's when I noticed it, an old metal handle embedded just above the base of the bricks, partly hidden by dust, and a shelf we never moved. It wasn't part of the wall's original construction. I pulled the shelf away, and Emily didn't stop me. She just watched, waiting. When I touched the handle, something behind the bricks knocked.
Once.
Then silence. I didn't pull it. Not yet. I took Emily's hand and led her back upstairs. The next day, I dug deeper into the history of the property, searching local archives and Reddit threads on haunted houses and underground structures. That's when I came across an old urban legend about a family that once lived in the same area. A man who went mad and sealed his son beneath his house after claiming the boy was filled with voices. The records were spotty, dismissed as rumor, but the dates lined up. The location matched. What if our house was built over that foundation? What if Emily wasn't the first? What if this wasn't just about our daughter, but about a cycle, a pattern? I went back through my recordings, through the strange voice I'd captured, and this time, I used audio analysis software. The waveform from the second voice, the one that had answered Emily, matched neither her vocal profile nor mine. It wasn't even human in pitch. It had depth and range far beyond what a child's voice could reach. I uploaded a short clip to a forum known for unexplained phenomena and YouTube horror mysteries, and someone replied with a translation. They claimed it was an old proto-language, not Latin, not Aramaic, but something more primal. The translation wasn't perfect, but the closest approximation was, "The root will remember. The blood will return." I didn't know what that meant, not fully.
But it haunted me.
That same night, Emily handed me another drawing. This one was of our family, Rachel, me, and her. But Rachel's face was scribbled out. Over her image, Emily had written, "She lied first." I tried calling Rachel, tried telling her what was happening, but she wouldn't answer. Instead, her sister picked up and told me that Rachel had been admitted to a psychiatric facility after she began screaming about the thing under the house and how it would take her too. She'd carved symbols into the walls of her room, symbols the doctors couldn't identify. When I asked what the symbols looked like, her sister sent me a photo. My blood ran cold. I'd seen those same shapes in Emily's drawings months ago. I thought they were just nonsense patterns, spirals, crosses, triangles overlapping like runes. But now I wasn't so sure. I was unraveling.
Fast.
I started seeing things that weren't there. Shadows moving in mirrors, reflections that lingered too long. I started dreaming about the handle in the wall, about what would happen if I pulled it. The dreams always ended the same way, with me in the basement, Emily beside me, both of us smiling as the wall crumbled and something stepped out. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, convinced that if I went downstairs, the wall would already be open. But each time it was still sealed. Until the night I heard Emily walking again, but this time her steps were accompanied by another set, heavier, dragging slightly. I know what you're thinking. This all sounds impossible, but it's real. It's happening. And now I think I know what it wants. Not Emily. Not Rachel.
Me.
Maybe I lied too. Maybe I ignored the signs, denied the truth, convinced myself this was all in our heads. Maybe this isn't just a haunting. Maybe it's justice. Maybe whatever is behind that wall isn't just something supernatural. Maybe it's ancient. A memory. A punishment. Passed down through families who forgot what they'd buried. Tomorrow, I'm going back into that basement. I'm going to pull the handle. I don't know what's behind that wall, but it's awake now, and it's waiting. If I don't come back, you'll know it wasn't just a story. I waited until just after midnight, when the world felt like it had slipped into some other layer of itself, quieter, more hollow. The house was still, and Emily was already asleep, or at least pretending to be. I stood at the top of the stairs leading to the basement for what felt like hours, holding the flashlight in one hand and an old crowbar in the other. Not because I thought I'd need it as a weapon, but because some small part of me was still clinging to logic, that maybe I'd find a hollow panel, a rotten beam, something that made sense. But deep down I knew. Whatever was behind that wall wasn't made of wood or stone. It was something older. Something that didn't belong in this world. My breathing was slow, my hands slick with sweat, but I stepped forward anyway, one creaking stair at a time, descending into the dark. When I reached the furnace room, the silence was so thick it rang in my ears. The air felt charged, like it did before lightning strikes, and I saw the handle again, now perfectly clean, as though someone had polished it while I was upstairs. For a moment, I hesitated. This was the line. Once I pulled it, there was no pretending anymore. No more, maybe it's psychological. No more, maybe Rachel's just sick. I crouched, placed the crowbar beside me, and grabbed the handle with both hands. It was cold, unnaturally cold. I pulled once. Nothing. Pulled again, harder. The bricks groaned. Then, with a sharp crack like a bone snapping, the section of the wall popped free and fell forward, revealing a dark tunnel beyond, carved not with tools, but scraped, clawed. The smell hit me like a wave. Earth, mold, something ancient and metallic. Like dried blood and rusted iron. At first, I didn't see anything. The tunnel was narrow and short, leading to what looked like a circular stone chamber, maybe 6 feet across, maybe less. I stepped inside, shining the light along the walls, and saw that every inch was covered in symbols. Some matched the ones from Emily's drawings. Others were older, more complex, like the etchings you see in deep caves or forgotten temples. And in the center of the room was a pit, not wide, but bottomless. At least, that's how it felt. I knelt beside it, and the second my fingers brushed the edge, the temperature dropped again. My flashlight flickered. Then I heard it breathing, but not from behind me. From below. I leaned forward slowly, trying to see if there was anything down there. That's when I heard the voice. Not Emily's. Not mine. It was the same voice from the recordings, guttural, heavy, echoing from the darkness beneath. You came. I staggered back, heart pounding, flashlight shaking. I turned to run, but standing at the mouth of the tunnel was Emily. She looked calm, peaceful. I told him you would, she said. He was waiting for you, Daddy. I asked her what it wanted, why it chose us. Her answer was simple, and it broke something inside me. Because we were easy to forget. Then she stepped forward, holding something in her hands. It was a small, leather-bound book. I'd never seen it before. She handed it to me and whispered, "He left this for you." I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were drawings, old ones, weathered, sketched in what looked like charcoal or ash. I flipped through page after page, and what I saw made my blood freeze. The images were of our house, long before it was ever built. The land, the well, and on every page, there was a figure, a tall, faceless presence standing behind a child. The final page showed a family of 3, a mother, a father, and a daughter. Their eyes were scratched out. Below them, written in childlike scrawl, were the words, "They all lied." At that moment, the ground beneath us rumbled. Dust fell from the ceiling. The pit began to pulse, emitting a low, rhythmic sound that felt more like a heartbeat than a vibration. Emily didn't flinch. She stepped closer and whispered, "He said it's time to remember." I shouted her name, begged her to come with me, to leave the basement, but she just smiled and said, "This was always about you." Then, before I could move, she stepped into the pit. I don't remember screaming. I think my body went numb. I lunged forward, tried to catch her, but she was gone. The silence afterward was unbearable. I stayed there for hours, calling her name, weeping, begging, pleading to whatever lived in that darkness to bring her back. But nothing answered. Eventually, I crawled out of the tunnel, collapsed on the basement floor, and passed out. When I woke up, the wall was sealed again. No handle, no cracks, nothing. I called the police, told them Emily had vanished, maybe wandered out in the night. There was a full investigation.
Drones.
Canines. Search parties. No trace of her was ever found. Rachel was brought back from the facility under heavy sedation. When she heard the news, she didn't cry. She just whispered, "It's done then," and closed her eyes like she already knew. The case eventually went cold. They ruled it a disappearance. My name stayed in the local papers for months until another tragedy took its place. People moved on. But I never did. I kept the book. I read it every night. And every night I dream of that chamber. I hear Emily singing. I hear him breathing. Sometimes I see flashes in the mirror, glimpses of her face smiling, standing just behind me. Other nights I wake up in the basement, not remembering how I got there. I've since tried to move away, to start fresh.
But the ground follows me.
It's under every floor, in every wall. I've come to understand something I refused to accept back then. That the possession didn't start with Emily. It didn't even start with Rachel. It started with me, long before she was born. Long before I ever knew what was watching us. That's the twist, isn't it? That I was never trying to save her. I was trying to save myself. But I failed. Because what was inside her was mine. It always was. And now that I've remembered, now that I've seen the truth, I know what I have to do. Tonight, I'm going back into that basement. And this time, I'm not coming back out. If you've stayed with me till now, if you've watched every second, then you know this isn't just a ghost story. It's a warning. Some doors should never be opened. But the ones that matter most, they're already open. Don't ignore the quiet places in your house. Don't brush off the voices your children claim to hear. And whatever you do, never lie to something that remembers. End of story.